Good afternoon, Chef Johnny. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much.
Great, wonderful. Well, for our viewers and listeners, this is Noreen at the Healthy Peaceful Podcast, and I'm welcoming today Chef Johnny Brannigan, otherwise known as the Vedic Chef. But I would like to just take a moment and briefly introduce Johnny. Chef Johnny is an international Ayurvedic vegetarian and a vegan chef with a deep knowledge base in the Vedic wisdom and holistic medicine, and a lifelong love of food and cooking. Trained in Ayurveda as a teacher of meditation by the Maharishi in Switzerland and Thailand, he has cooked and taught in over 33 countries, writing new recipes along the way. He co-founded the organic snack company in 1998 in the UK, and then he traveled to the US about 20 years ago, where he cooked at the Raj, the top Ayurvedic spa in the United States, and he wrote The Global Vegetarian, his first cookbook. He's also the chef and co-author of the 7 award-winning cookbook, Eat, Taste, and Heal, and he's writing his third cookbook. Perhaps he'll share that with us today. And you can learn more about Chef Johnny, and I will share all of his handles on social media and website and all of that at the end of our podcast and on the show notes. Welcome. Yeah, awesome.
Thank
Glad you're joining me here today. Um, yeah, I said I wasn't going to ask any tough questions, so I'll start with an easy one. And Let's see. One of the things that I saw, I believe it was in your book. Let me see. Sorry. Okay. Um, there was something about a quiz in your book, Eat, Taste, and Heal, that you wanted people to name 3 foods from the taste groups of Ayurveda. And maybe you can start off by just explaining the 6 tastes of Ayurveda, and I will pick a taste group like astringent, and I'll put you to the fire and quiz you on that.
you. Thank you. Good.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, taste. Well, food and taste, that's a fundamental little marriage there. We are delighted by taste, our taste buds, and we have preferences for taste, and sometimes we're maybe eating, a lot of one or two tastes and not very much of some of the other tastes. And so Ayurveda is coming in and trying to rectify that, because Ayurveda is identifying these 6 tastes in food. I mean, we've seen some chefs who've identified 4 tastes, or 3 tastes, but 6 tastes is like, oh, what are the other 2 then? Because most people can think, oh, sweet and sour and salty. So that's kind of quite exciting, really, because Ayurveda has this very beautiful and deep understanding that these tastes are going to have specific effects on your body, on your tissues, on your whole makeup, on your well-being, and it will have effects on your digestion, which is, in a way, you could say that is the central element or theme of Ayurveda, is the digestion. How is your digestion, in terms of how it's going to influence your health? So Ayurveda is identifying these 6 tastes and teaching us how to use them in an intelligent way, when we're selecting our foods, at the store or in the kitchen, to use them to, create effects and maybe even create balance, a state of balance, where before there wasn't balance, there was an imbalance,
Mm-hmm.
and some symptoms maybe, or, certain effects that are not desirable. So let's look at what those are. And so basically, the first 3 are sweet, sour, and salty. And these three tastes are known to build your tissue, build up your tissues, increase tissue mass. All right. If you eat lots of sweet, your tissues will get nourished. If you eat lots of sour, your tissues will build and get nourished. And if you eat salt, lots of salt, your tissues will increase in mass, right? So if you're trying to build your body more, build more muscle, build healthier tissue, then you need those three tastes. And then the second little group of three are bitter, pungent, and astringent. Those don't sound so familiar, maybe, to most people, particularly, astringent. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, what's astringent?" Pungent, of course, we know is, well, we'll go into that in a minute. So those three tastes are known to reduce tissue.
Mm-hmm. So
So if
otherwise
you,
known as anabolic and catabolic, I think they.
yeah,
So either
exactly,
building or reducing.
exactly. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want to, lose weight, for example, which a lot of people do, um, you would focus when you're cooking, preparing foods and choosing foods on those three tastes more. And that's going to help you burn away excess, tissue mass or fat or fluids and toxins, particularly, will help you burn them away, digest them, digest better and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and basically, Ayurveda sees this as energy. It's like the science of energetics. Because some of these tastes will warm you and increase warmth and heat in the body, and the others will
So
cool your
the
body.
the I believe in Ayurveda they call that the virya, where it's heating or cooling.
The virya, exactly, yeah.
Virya.
The energetics of the taste, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, fairly obvious is a pungent food, for example, which is things like ginger and garlic, um, and well, lots of foods, pepper, peppers and pepper are going to warm and heat you. Tomatoes, um, and that's a fairly obvious example of a taste that's going to heat you, warm you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've got diseases or imbalances which are due to cold or cold based, then you're going to need more pungent food,
Okay.
as an
So
example.
so pungent food would have a warming effect on the body.
Exactly, yes. Pungent food is going back to this central theme of digestion. Pungent food is going to really increase the power of your digestive fire,
Mm-hmm.
known as the Agni. So your Agni is this central theme is your inner digestive fire, or the fire in your body is going to be improved and increased when you eat more pungent foods, especially ginger, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain foods that Ayurveda really loves, and one of them is ginger, which you also see in Chinese medicine and other systems of medicine. They love ginger because it's going to increase your digestive firepower, which in turn is going to increase your ability to digest, to absorb, to eliminate effectively. And if you've got those three going on, you've got really good health. So having some ginger in your diet every day, either as a tea or as a little grated little spoonful,
Mm-hmm.
or as I sometimes do, I make ginger shots out of ginger juice mixed with some coconut water and some
Sure.
cilantro juice and maybe some cardamom, honey.
Or a lime pickle or a ginger
Shot.
lime pickle.
Lime pickle, yeah. Well, that's going to be like hot and sour.
Sure.
So that's definitely going to increase the fire, the digestive power. Yeah.
Okay. You talked about the importance of digestion to Ayurveda, and in particular, you're using the word Agni. And I know Ayurveda uses the term Sama Agni, Could you just elaborate on that a bit and what that means and how our Ayurveda really looks at digestion and emphasizes that through the six tastes, and particular Sama Agni, balanced?
Well, the word sama appears a lot in Ayurveda and in Sanskrit. Sanskrit terminology, and it means evenness. It's like it's an evenness of flow. Like for example, samadhi. The word samadhi pops up a lot in Ayurvedic and yogic knowledge, and it means D is the intellect or the mind, and so it means an even state of the mind. So Sama Agni is an even state of your Agni. In other words, it's not too extreme one way, like it's too much heat, too much fire in your body, which is a possible imbalance, and it's not like underkindled. It's not weak. So it's not really burning the food and the nutrients properly, not really processing them properly. So Sama Agni would be an even state of the Agni. So it's in a state of good balance, you could say, which is an ideal situation. That's how I look at it anyway.
Sure. Yeah, that you're really trying with the food that you cook and create to create a system of balance in the body, including the Sama Agni, which is going to be
I would say,
a more balanced Agni.
I would say yes. Yes, you want your Agni to be in a balanced state. There's no question about that, as I explained, but you see, it's not just the food that you're cooking and eating. It's not going to come from that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's going to be a big part of it,
Yes.
And so, because obviously, because everyone's different, right? Everyone's unique. And so one person will need to really build up that fire because it might be a bit weak. And there are many, many factors that can make it weak, see, many factors. And it's not just what food you're eating. See.
Sure.
It's factors like your level of toxins in your body, how much toxins have accumulated. It's things like, do you exercise properly, regularly? Which is going to, exercise is going to increase the efficiency of your fire. Or do you exercise too much and it's too high? Things like that. And it's also going to be affected by your mental state. Your mental state of, that's another sama situation where, like I said, samadhi, another state is the mind, even though it's all over the place. Are you like afflicted with anger and bursts of anger, or are you kind of meek and getting trodden on? It's so your mental state is going to influence your Agni, your Sama Agni.
Sure. So what you're saying is that really everything that you digest, your daily routine, your daily lifestyle, has an impact.
Exactly.
It has an impact on your Agni, which is directly related to, or is really at the core of your health.
Yes, and not just your daily activity, but also your previous history. How have you been behaving? Were you drinking copious amounts of alcohol for 10 years, 20
Sure.
years? Or were you fasting a lot, starving yourself, or were you eating tons of raw food? All these things can affect your Agni in one way or another. Alcohol, for example, is going to increase fire and heat in the body. So it's going to make it maybe function too hot. Raw food, lots and lots of raw food may dampen it down. We think of it as like a fire, you see. What happens if you pour some spirits on a fire? It flares up. What happens if you dump tons and tons of piles of wood on a fire? It goes down, it goes out maybe.
Sure.
You know, it's dependent on that, and it's dependent on your thinking in the past, your behavior. Yeah, it's a delicate thing, you know, and it's like spirituality, you know, the practice of spiritual techniques is going to affect your agni. Some people say that it actually diminishes it, you know, in your stomach. See, sometimes you have to be careful of too much spiritual practice because the fires, you know, might increase in other parts of the body, in your mind, for example, or in your heart, that might diminish in the stomach from too much spiritual practice.
Well, I think the image of the fire is just a really beautiful way to think about it, and to you know, just have that image in mind in terms of one of the hearts of Ayurveda in terms of Agni.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was reading about was a question that came to mind was, how do you get the flavor of bliss, Ananda, from the food that you prepare? You can answer that both, you know, professionally and individually as to your own experience, but also for our viewers and listeners who are mostly home chefs, home cooks. You might have some suggestions for them as well. So we all aspire to that, of course.
That's a lovely question. Yes, the flavor of bliss. It's a good title for a book. Like that. Well, you know, I think that, you see, ultimately, the beginning of that is coming from the bliss of the chef or the mother, the creator of the food. You know, I think it's coming, definitely the majority of it is coming from that. That's where you start. That's your starting point, is the chef being able to connect to his or her own bliss, his or her own state of joy, of bliss. And what is that bliss like? You know, is it an excited, you know, types of bliss of, you know, jumping around, or is it like an even peaceful bliss? You know, or is it sort of, sometimes it's bliss and sometimes you're depressed, up and down.
Sure.
You know, I think that's where we got to start, though. And I think, you know, the whole idea of the Vedic chef is a chef who is able to draw from the Vedic wisdom, the Vedic technologies, let's say, of increasing bliss, right, in the mind and in the body. You know, and so that's what we're really interested in as a Vedic chef. You know, I would say, is cultivating and developing and increasing that bank of inner bliss. And, you know, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but certain people nowadays are talking about the pineal gland as being a very important gland in the development of one's own pharmacy, the pharmacy of the body. You know, the secretions of the gland, the endorphins, and, you know, the part of the Vedic wisdom is addressing that one can activate the pineal gland so that it produces a pharmacy of well-being in the body and in the brain. And well-being, you know, the ultimate well-being would be a state of bliss, inner bliss, evenness of bliss. You know, and bliss just means like intense good feeling, intense joy, happiness, intense, you know, strength of one's feeling of, I feel great, I feel joy, I feel something special, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be really the goal of Ayurveda as well, is how to produce that in the body through all of the little facets of Ayurveda that are available, all the techniques and of the of course the digestion process itself, affecting the digestion process, so that your food is actually turning into a product which is a chemical of bliss, which is actually what is the goal of Ayurveda, or one of them. That your food will end up being its finest product will be what they call ojas, which is like a sort of liquid bliss. And even more fine, a refinement of that would be amrita, which is nectar, and then a further refinement would be soma, which is said to be the finest, subtlest layer in the body and in the creation, which is basically physical bliss. And this is talked about a lot in the Vedas, particularly the Rig Veda. It describes
Mm-hmm.
how digestion can result in this beautiful product known as soma.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost got a mythical status in the world, I suppose, because people have not been quite sure what it is, because the Vedas are, they're sung in verses, and they're very sort of poetical when you translate them. And people are not quite sure, what is this soma? Is it a plant? Is it a drug? Is it a drink? But the truth is that it is the product of your digestion, and it's the product of your pineal gland through refining its functioning through meditation or spiritual practices, or just by being extremely healthy.
Sure.
One's pineal gland may activate and produce this beautiful pharmacy in the body and the brain. Yeah. So, but that's like taking it from the highest first. I would say the principle of the highest first. But then, if you look at then going to perhaps the other end, we would say that the the way food is produced, the way it's grown, the way it's delivered, the way it's received, the way it is then stored and prepared, and the way it's treated while it's being prepared. Um, that's of course a lot of that is again the attention of the chef, the awareness of the chef, the consciousness, we would say. That's going to and the way it is blessed or offered before eating is very important. You'll see that as a theme, in Ayurvedic cooking and Vedic preparations of food. You'll see this idea of food being blessed or offered, and that is again, a consciousness. It's the stream of consciousness of the chef or whoever's offering it, the mother, going into the food and connecting with the inner state of silence, of expanded awareness, just briefly even, and that flows into the food during the offering and actually transforms the food, transforms the molecules, particles. Now, that awareness is an awareness of bliss, which a true Vedic chef is going to have, it's going to be just normal. That will enliven that bliss level in the food. Because the bliss level is already there. The soma level is already there. Because this is a layer of reality that is permeating everything in creation on the physical level, and its substance is bliss,
Sure.
intense bliss or joy.
Sure. So
So
is
there's an
soup.
enlivenment by the person who's doing the blessing, the offering, from his or her consciousness of that level in the food, and that then is what I would call blissful food or bliss creating food.
Mm.
That food will make you feel high, will make you feel purer, make you feel more what we call sattvic,
Sure.
the quality of, you know, lightness and um, and the joy and the quality of purity even, and creativity,
Yeah.
you know.
So what you're saying is that the quality of the food is important, and the mind of the chef, the consciousness of the chef, the awareness of the chef,
Mm,
and
absolutely.
also just how you approach cooking, or how any of us approaches cooking, that it's an offering, um, that all of that will really enhance flavor of the food, Ananda. Um, some of our viewers and listeners might be looking for something more concrete, in terms of.
Well, you know, that's a great comment, but you see, it becomes concrete.
Okay, that's a great response. So that
Yeah, the
the
result is
the the
concrete.
energy the energy becomes matter, and vice versa.
Exactly. Everything starts as absolute, as infinite. Everything starts with quantum. You know, everything. Every particle comes out of quantum field, which is the field of nothingness in a sense. And it's the same with the mind. It's the same with the universe. And so, you know, we need to really accept this as reality, that the quantum field um, influences the physical, creates the
Mm-hmm.
physical, and it influences it. And the quantum field is something to be owned in the awareness of an Ayurvedic student or an Ayurvedic follower or an Ayurvedic teacher. You know, it's something to be awakened and enlivened, because that's the main healing force. You know, what it has to be. You know, and it's like when you know, people don't really heal some other people, but you heal yourself. You really heal yourself. You know,
Sure, sure.
and
I was reading that by really focusing on healing yourself, and Ayurveda is known as the science of self-healing, that
yeah,
by healing yourself, you will then be in a position to heal others.
yeah,
But if
absolutely.
but if but if you're not whole, um, it doesn't make sense to try to bring that to others, because you still have housework to do, as they say. Or any comments regarding that, or feedback?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to discourage the aspiring healer,
No,
and
no, no.
you know, they
It
need to
is
be
a, it is
perfect
it is a process.
first, but it they will have more success if they are enlivening that field of wholeness within themselves. You know, that's the thing. They are going to, because they see basically the healer, the true healer, is connecting to the field of wholeness, and then they are awakening it in the person they're trying to heal. They're awakening in them so that they then start to heal from within themselves, you know, from the field of wholeness. Um, this is what Ayurveda is describing, you see. It's describing that there is this field of wholeness. And
Well,
it's
I like those two words that you're using, both enlivening and awakening.
yes, and I think, you know, to be fair, I got those from the Maharishi, who was my teacher, my main teacher throughout all this journey.
Hmm.
He was an individual, a man, a being who had clearly full knowledge of the field of wholeness. You know, he was a rishi, not just a rishi, but a great rishi, a Maharishi. So that means he knew the rishi, which is the knower. The rishi is known as the knower.
And the
Since they,
Maha means great.
exactly, yes. Maha, like Mahalakshmi. Maharishi is a great seer. So what they see is they see the truth of life, and the truth of life is they see the eternal. They experience the eternal as the base of their mind, and they are fully connected to the eternal, and so they're able to awaken that in other people. That's what makes them the great teacher. You know, they can awaken it in others. A teacher who can't do that is failing. See, they may be able to describe it and talk about it, write about it, but the true teacher is going to awaken it in somebody else and allow them access to it through their own endeavors. You know, and it's up to the student then to pursue it. You know, to make the most of what they've learned, make the most of the access, you know, and really make it real for them. You know, that's what the true teacher does, true rishi. It's a beautiful thing. And I definitely, you know, experienced that in my journey, you know, studying and spending time with the Maharishi. It awakened the rishi level in me so that it became a conscious element spontaneously when I was cooking or when I was teaching or whenever, or even going to the movie. It's alive, you know, and it's a beautiful thing because that is the main goal of Ayurveda. It's the source of Ayurveda, it's the goal of Ayurveda, and it's also the path of Ayurveda. Is that wholeness, that unified feel, that consciousness element. And if that's missing from your life, you know, you're not even living life 50%. You know, you're sort of cheating yourself out of the 100% of life, of this full life. You're not doing yourself the best service.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's really beautiful. Thank you for that. If you were to just pick three, and this is kind of a tough one, but 3 words to describe Ayurveda if somebody didn't know anything about Ayurveda, Ayurvedic cooking specifically.
Ayurvedic cooking?
Yeah, 3 words to describe Ayurvedic cooking. And I know it's sort of an unfair question. What would those words be?
Well, I think the first word that comes to mind is holistic. And I'm referring to Ayurveda generally, and I'm referring to the cooking at the same time. I feel that Ayurveda is truly holistic in the fullest sense of the word. And Ayurvedic cooking, you see, you know, I use the word wholeness. The word wholeness and the word holistic are, you know, very related, interrelated. So that would be in the first word I would use. Well, I think, you know, I think the word bliss has to be there.
Sure.
I know we talked about that already, but, you know, I feel that personally, I feel that, you know, when I'm in the kitchen, when I'm doing Ayurvedic cooking, there's a bliss, there's a dance there, which I highly enjoy and I highly recommend. And it's a dance and a joy that it often isn't there, you know, in chefs, even in top chefs, I think sometimes. I mean, there's joy, of course, because there's joy at every level. But, you know, bliss is an awareness.
I love those 2 words that you just used, that perhaps professional chefs, and whether they're at the top level or not, they're experiencing joy, at least momentary joy, but I liked you use the interplay of dance and joy.
Yes, I did. And I used that because, cooking is movement. There's a lot of movement.
It is, yeah.
You are moving around the kitchen, and if you're cooking for, a number of people, that's even more the case. And I personally find that my body, is being used in that way somehow. I feel like I'm dancing around in the kitchen. I feel like I want to, because I find the whole thing of getting ingredients and, reaching for spices and stirring things is that dance,
Yeah.
And the dance is going on in your awareness, you see, as well. The dance is going on in your awareness. That's the real beauty of it too, is, am I aware of my bliss? Am I aware of my being? And is that really a conscious element in the dance, in the cooking? And that's the true beauty that I feel. And because in cooking, your ego can come in easily in different ways, and that limits you, I feel. You could be disappointed, you could be angry, you can be fearful, you can be tense, anxious, nervous, all those things. But ideally, you don't want any of those. You can be competitive, you don't want any of those going in the food. You want this feeling of the dance, of the joy, of the expression, of the creative flow, of the intelligence, of the surprise. You want all those to be going in the food, the delight.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So holistic bliss, and if you were to,
Yeah, the third word. Well, I would say harmonizing or balancing would be an important word.
yeah, I like
Probably
harmonizing.
harmonizing, yeah. Well, yeah, when you're actually consciously treating somebody with your food, then that's very important. Yeah, harmonizing their body,
Sure.
harmonizing their circumstances with food. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be a major point of concern for you. And yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks. Those are great words. And especially the dance. Um, do you think Ayurvedic cooking is a way to bring pleasure back into our health?
Pleasure into our health. Definitely.
Because we can read many health books, and we can feel that there's a lot of austerity in some of these nutritional books and readings, and but Ayurveda seems to marry pleasure and health, unlike many other approaches. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that, or if you have any
Well, yes.
comments.
I mean, I think that pleasure is another word for bliss
Mm.
in a way.
Yes.
I mean, it's not the same. It's not
Yeah.
the same, but it's they're very close. So I see. I think that it's
Well,
all about perception, right? A lot of it is about perception. Your perception, my perception. And perception is a sensual situation, right? Where we're gaining pleasure through the senses. I'm hearing music, I'm feeling pleased, I'm feeling pleasure. Yeah, right. Everyone loves music, don't they?
sure.
And so there's perception is involved in that. Hearing, sound, um, seeing. The pleasure of, say, looking at a field where broccoli is growing or cauliflower is growing, or any vegetable, fennel. And then looking at the kitchen itself with these foods in them, or looking in the storeroom at the foods. That's the beginning, well, let's say going to the market is, I think, the beginning of the process of cooking. When you go to the market and look at all these beautiful foods, for a chef, I think that's great pleasure. And, it enlivens something in the heart of the chef, which is then transferred into cooking, how he chooses. Because you're not going to choose the sort of, manky, degenerated looking bits of old food. He's not going to choose the
Right.
not the nice ones. He's going to choose the best, or she's going to choose the best they can find. So yeah, there's pleasure in that. See, ideally there should be pleasure at every stage. There should be pleasure when the food is being grown. The grower should feel pleasure about the growing. This is all going to influence the end result, the dish, and then the digestion, and then the tissues that are created. Everything is going to influence it, you see. How, the honesty of the growing and the honesty of the transaction, selling, that's all going to influence the eater, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And, the age of the food, the freshness of the food. Looking at fresh food gives pleasure. Looking at old food, stale food, generally does not. Perceiving it. And, the taste, that's another sense, that's another perception. The taste of the food, or the smell. Let's start with that. The smell of the food is going to be pleasurable, or should be pleasurable, and give delight. It's all about delight, pleasure, delight, bliss. We're all in this. This is the same arena.
Sure.
How many senses have we done? Touch. Yeah, there's another one. Touching the food. Have you ever sort of carried a big bundle full of like fennel with all the grass coming off it, and carried it and felt it on your face, or smelling it and feeding it?
Well, just the smell of fresh fennel is wonderful.
The smell, yeah, but I'm talking about the touch of it.
Right, the touch, yeah.
The touch is, and the touch of foods is often, really interesting. The textures are interesting,
Absolutely.
the skin,
yeah,
or the juice, coming out.
right.
You touch these things, or even if it's just like you've got your hands in a bowl full of. I was making some Beet Burgers yesterday or the day before.
Sure.
And I was making these amazing. I made this risotto, right, and I turned it into these balls. I put.
Okay, and
I
like croquettes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like croquettes.
did you fry them?
No, I baked them.
Oh, okay.
But what I did is I rolled them in. I added some flavors.
Was that a great use of a leftover, right?
It was actually. It was the morning we had the risotto, and there was some left. So I thought, right, we'll turn this into balls. So it was yellow.
But what I love about that is it freshens the leftover.
Yeah. Well, it just transformed it into
Right.
a completely different, experience. It was
Sure.
quite extraordinary. Because how risotto is kind of, it's quite kind of moist and
A bit
fluid.
mushy.
It's mushy, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But over time it dries, and I added some. I actually added some Parmesan cheese, which happened to be there. Now this is not strictly Ayurvedic, because
Right. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
None of this is really completely strict, I guess. But
Sure.
it was just an interesting experience, because I put some herbs in, fresh herbs, sage and some parsley, and then I rolled it in this mixture of ground oats and sesame seeds and ground walnuts. I
So,
ground them
those, so,
together.
so those are really they served as the binder.
No, they served as a
Oh,
coating.
they were the
I
coating.
didn't put it
Okay.
inside. I just
Oh,
rolled
I
them.
see. Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
They were already bound because of the rice, you see,
The
being,
rice. Okay.
the
Yeah.
starch. But anyway, so I baked these, balls and in the oven, and it was just really interesting for me because I had, at about the age of 13, I had been invited to the home of my art teacher. And there were two art teachers that I really was fond of, and he came as well. And the wife of Colin, he was a sculpture teacher. She had made these rice and cheese balls, right, with this crunchy coating. And I was about 13 years old, as I say, and I really remember those being particularly good.
Right.
I've never had this before in my life.
Sure, sure. It was something out of your repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, well, my mother's repertoire, or my father's. I
Sure.
was
Yeah.
eating their
Yeah.
food at 13, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, and I was making these balls and I baked them, and it was so close to this
Yeah.
rice cheese ball that she had made, and it made me so happy, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think food, food does bring up memory and
Yeah, exactly. Well,
taste,
that was
flavor,
pleasure.
pleasure. And I know we got a little sidetracked there, but you were talking about the importance of the tactile sense in cooking and touch.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's one of the touch sensations when you're preparing food. There's a lot of different textures going on.
Sure. Yeah.
You're not.
They both sound delicious. The risotto croquettes and the beet burgers.
It's the
So,
Beet Burgers that were great.
did you serve the croquettes with a sauce or a
I did, yes.
yeah, yeah, because they can be a little dry otherwise.
Yeah, they weren't actually dry for some
Okay.
reason. They were actually quite nice. I mean, not overly dry. I served them with actually made a dressing,
Nice.
which was like a mustard and orange dressing, with lots of flavors in, herbs and stuff.
I'm sure that was a big hit.
It really was, yeah. It was a great combination, yeah. I served the balls on top of this crispy salad greens,
Oh,
and then I poured the dressing a little bit on top. And yeah, so I mean,
beautiful, beautiful. I
pleasure
like
is a pleasure. It's not a
sure.
pleasure.
Yeah,
It has to be pleasurable. You've got
absolutely.
to feel pleased about yourself. You've got to feel pleased about the food. And then they eat it and they feel pleased. It's a natural
Eh,
cycle, I
Yeah,
think.
and I think for a chef, that's really the greatest pleasure is um, experiencing someone's, is having someone experience enjoyment um, around your food. I mean, that's just a real gift to the chef, I feel.
Man, it's very, very pleased.
Mm,
Fantastic. Very
it's great.
fulfilling.
Yeah. I know that many chefs will talk about cooking as a creative act,
Mm,
that it's an act of creativity.
mm, they do. We do. Yes, well, is there a question there? Are you saying, do I feel that, or what
Yeah,
are you?
I just wanted to see, what you thought about that. I mean, we've talked a lot about it already, so maybe it's a bit redundant, but um,
Yeah, well, I mean, we have talked. I mean, what could I add to that? Well, it's creative intelligence, right? That's the term we use in Vedic teaching. That we describe the unified field as creative intelligence, the field of creative intelligence. I love this phrase. And, so it takes creativity and it takes intelligence to cook, you know. The, there's an intelligence, and it's not just the intelligence of knowing what you're doing and knowing the ingredients and knowing how they go together, which is very important. But it's also just the intelligence of the intuition, I think, of feeling what's right, what goes with what, and what you're doing, and how you're creating, how you're putting things together, how you're using ingredients. It takes a lot of creativity and intelligence, I believe.
Mm.
It takes
Mm.
a lot of intuition, a lot of feeling.
Sure. How
Um,
do you distinguish creativity from intelligence? So you are they both
wow, what a
two
question.
are they two sides of the same coin?
Um, I guess you could say that. I mean, how I distinguish them is the intellect. You're using the intellect with your intelligence, and the creativity, I think you're using your heart.
Okay.
I would say that's the
So
difference.
the heart mind.
Well,
And I know that can be construed as heart only in Eastern traditions, so maybe that's a not a good description.
nothing is ever isolated,
Nothing is
um,
ever what?
isolated from
That's
anything else.
yeah.
So
That's
you're an intelligent artist or you're a creative scientist. I mean, it's, you're using all these faculties, but of course, you are the creator in the kitchen. You are creating from these raw ingredients, these raw elements, and you're creating dishes, and you're using creativity, you know, abundantly. There's no question about it. It's an extremely creative process, and your creation, the end result, your meal, is the result of that creativity and the result of intelligence. You're using intelligence. You're using discrimination. You're using intuition to decide, how you're going to do things and put them together. It's extremely creative. Yeah. I mean, it's like any artist. It's got different mediums. Um, and you. So I mean, I started life as a painter. I used to paint every day, and well, I mean, I still do paint sometimes, but and it's like they feel similar. I think in a way, I think cooking and painting feels similar. I mean, I sometimes like will grab my assistant, or not grab her, but I'll say, look at this, and I'll be just like looking in the bowl at this pattern of all this stuff, in a bowl,
sure.
different colors and stuff,
Yeah.
herbs and you know, and mustard and amino acids and colored rice and grated beet. That's a beet, and I'll just say, look at that. Isn't that amazing? And
And will she be as excited about it as you, or will she appreciate it the same way you are, or it depends, I guess.
I don't know whether we can measure that, whether it's the same, but
That's true.
maybe it's probably more for me because I'm doing it. But I think, she was definitely appreciating it, what I was seeing, of course.
Well, it's lovely to be able to share it.
It is, and I think you see, that's again a product of awareness. Are you even aware how amazing this all looks and how this coming together is? Are you just stuck in your own head, in your own thoughts, and you don't even particularly notice? You're just like, oh, I've got to get these burgers made. I got to get this done. Oh my God, are you like that?
Right.
See, I'm not like that. It's not a stressful thing for me, cooking. I mean, it
Sure.
certainly has some stressful moments, I suppose, some pressure moments, but I don't find it stressful. I find it, like I say, a dance.
Yeah.
And I kind of recommending chefs to get into that dance and feel that dance. But, as a prerequisite, they're going to need to um, connect that awareness, connect that inner flow. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's, well, it might in some people, it's something you cultivate through.
It's a practice.
It's well, I don't even know. I don't know whether it's a practice. I think it's
Okay.
actually spontaneous.
Yeah.
I think it comes as a result of your own holistic development. It
Mm.
certainly has with me.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to step back in your mind, or you are stepping back in your mind spontaneously, and just being aware of all those things that I'm talking about, being aware of yourself, being aware of the beauty, being aware of the dance, being aware of all the, what you were saying, pleasure, the smells, and everything, and enjoying it, enjoying it as a facet of your cooking, you know, enjoying yourself in the play of the food creation. That's what I'm talking about. See?
Mm.
And this could sound really quite esoteric, I suppose, or out there for some people. But to me, it's the essential element of cooking and of any creation, of any activity. Everyone should be doing this because you see, I'm going back to what Ayurveda is for. What's its purpose?
I did just to follow up regarding that um, is what you're saying is that the creativity, which may be spontaneous, but it's very much connected to connecting with the source, whatever your idea of that may be. Am I understanding what you're expressing there in that regard?
I think you are, partially. I was going to describe it in a different way, because one of the things that is discussed and brought out in the Vedic knowledge is how, in the process of creation, everything divides from one, and it divides sequentially, right? So in creation, in your mind, you start off with oneness, and it's mathematics is there in it. So you've got this one field of the unified field, and it wants to create and become many. All right, it's the university, the unity of diversity, and that what this concept that I'm talking about is called the three-in-one structure of knowledge, and it delineates that within this oneness there are three elements that are going to be present in every act of creation, and it is the one is the knower. First one is the knower. All right,
Mm-hmm.
that's you, and I would say that's the chef. Okay, the chef is the knower. The second element is the process of knowing, and that's like the process of cooking, the process of creating dishes. And the third element is the known, which is the food that you're creating. All right. So you can apply this to any situation.
Sure. But we're
Um,
applying it to cooking.
yes. And so you see, the knower is called the rishi, which I mentioned before,
The
because the
rishi,
rishi knows.
rishi.
Yes, the
Mm-hmm.
knower is called the rishi,
Mm-hmm.
because the rishi is the one who knows the self or himself or herself. They know the nature of themselves, which is unbounded consciousness, unbounded being, unbounded bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And the process of knowing is what what is unfolding as creation in front of you as you are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's called the um, that's called the Chandas, I believe, the meter,
Mm-hmm.
and then the known is the called the Devata. I might have mixed those two up. I'm not sure, but And the Devata is, the Devata is the what you're creating.
Sure, the object of creation.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure.
And in the universe, the Devata value are the individual laws that are building the universe. The laws of nature.
Sure.
So the chandas like the process, the meter, the chandas. So this is also present in, for example, Vedic cognition. In Vedic, when the Vedas first came into being, they weren't written down by some writer. They came in as a cognition in a rishi's mind.
And just for our listeners and viewers, most probably know what the Vedas are, but maybe you can just let them know.
Oh yeah.
The Vedas are ancient
Yes. Well,
5,000 wisdom.
we're talking about Ayurveda. Okay. So we see the word Veda is in there. Okay. I'm just going to open the window a bit.
Sure.
So the word Veda, Ayurveda, comes from the Vedas, and the word Veda really means knowledge, but it specifically applies to what we call pure knowledge, a state of pure knowledge. So it's unmanifest. It is pure and ready to manifest into
So
bits of knowledge.
so kind of the Purusha and the Prakriti.
Exactly. Yes. The Purusha and the Prakriti. So the Purusha is the field of pure knowledge. It's like the infinite universal soul. And then the Prakriti. And it's sometimes, it would be sort of referred to as male.
Sure.
And the Prakriti is, is nature, what is created, which is referred to as female. That's right. But so the the Veda is like the omnipresent field of knowledge. It's unmanifest. And the Vedas.
And the Vedas they weren't written down. They
weren't written down for several thousand years.
They were transmitted orally, I believe.
Exactly. And that was because when the Rishi was the being who cognized them, and the way they cognized them was through they heard them. They heard the sound of them in their mind. They heard the verses, like in singing form. The Vedic knowledge is a sound-based system of knowledge. And so they cognized them in their very refined awareness, and they cognized these sounds, and they saw what they were about, what they were describing, and they would sing them when they cognized them. They would come out of spontaneous singing of these verses. It's an extraordinary situation, actually, because it's like nature is coming through a person, a human, or a very highly developed human. It's coming through them as sound and as actual words in the language of nature, which is pre-Sanskrit, I believe. And so, they were sung by the Rishi, and then different Rishis who are named in the Vedas, in the Vedic, literature that we've got now. Different Rishis recognize different areas of the Vedas, because it's a vast body of knowledge which is describing all of the laws of nature that exist in the universe, right? So the Veda is the body of knowledge, and the Vedas is thousands of years later, somebody, was listening to these chants because they were passed down from the Rishi to their sons, usually, or their daughters sometimes. And the son or the daughter became the new Rishi, who would keep this knowledge the same. They would sing it every day, and they would keep it in this oral form. And it's actually fascinating because there are 8 different ways of singing the same verse, and that is a way of keeping the verse exactly the same as it was when it was recognized, like a testing format.
Wow.
It's really extraordinary because you see, when you look at the Vedas now, you've got a very extraordinary situation that thousands of years later, this is being sung, and it's the same as when it was cognized. It hasn't been changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's extraordinary. I mean, it's
Yes.
almost probably unique. It's been kept the same because it's so important. It's so valuable. And
It's timeless. It's timeless. Timeless wisdom.
it's timeless in that it will reappear in any creation.
Sure.
It will always reappear because it's so fundamental. And so, you got 4 main Vedas that were all cognized.
Right.
Four sections: the Rig Veda, the Soma Veda, the Atharva Veda, and the Yajur Veda. And from them, you get 8 Upper Vedas, like subsections, you see. So that's how you get Ayurveda. Ayurveda is a subsection of the Rig Veda, which is the first main Veda. And, there are other subsections about other areas of life, like music or astrology, etc., etc.
Sure. So to circle back to the rishi, or the knower, the process, and the known, we were talking about creativity, and you were talking about how you access the field of creativity, and that and you were talking about those 3 components: the knower, the process, and the object of the process, or the known.
Exactly. And one is sort of, ideally one is in that process during any act of creation,
whether it's cooking or painting or
writing a book, or anything really. Yes, ideally one is, because that is a state of holistic awareness, which is a state of fulfillment, and that's the ideal state to be in when one is doing these acts of creation, because then one is really living life as the Vedas describe. See?
Would you say that one is really living life, or one is really experiencing life?
Yeah, well, you see, somebody could say, I'm experiencing life, right? But they're only experiencing like half of it, or part of it, because they're not experiencing their own inner bliss, their own inner being, as separate from everything else, separate from their thoughts, separate from their actions. I mean, I don't know. I mean, living, people are living life, right? They're living life, but they're missing themselves. The self has got buried in living and in thinking.
Right. Well, that's beautiful, because they might be here, but they haven't really uncovered what is more real, or
Exactly. Yeah, they haven't uncovered the real.
Or they haven't been willing to uncover.
Yeah, or they haven't been able to. They haven't had the opportunity. Yeah, they haven't. You see, basically, what is covering up the pure self, pure consciousness, is thought. Just like smoke is covering fire. Sometimes you can't see the fire; you just see smoke.
Sure. We think our thoughts are real. I use think there and thought twice, so that was. Or
Well, I mean,
thoughts are like clouds.
Yeah, they are real. They are real, but they're covering the state of non-thought.
Yeah.
The state of pure thought.
Sure.
And that's a shame. It's a lot. See, that's the point. So you're never going to stop thinking, but at a certain stage, you're going to be able to separate out the state of pure thought or the source of thought from thought, and you're going to suddenly have this dimension in everything you think, and therefore everything you do, which is going to be a dimension of fulfillment, freedom. See? So one has to go to the source of thought regularly and experience the state of no thought, typically in meditation, or it might be in dance. Some people experience it in dance, certain types of dance. One has to experience that, and then from there one can start to experience that during ordinary time, out of meditation, out of any practice. That's
Sure.
what we're doing. That's what we're doing in the Vedic sort of teachings. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So it's a very conscious path. You're choosing to do this. You're choosing to refer to your inner self, and then refer to what you're doing, what's outside of that. And then you're referring to both at the same time. But it's all very spontaneous. This is spontaneous growth,
Right. It's not. It feels fluid. It's not.
Well, you can't engineer it.
Yeah. I guess that's you're not trying to orchestrate it. It's,
No, you can't,
sure,
because
sure.
when you try to do that, you create some strain. You're like copying. You're copying what you see as effects of, say, somebody else who is experiencing or living that, and you're trying to orchestrate it, and it creates strain.
Sure.
And many teachers have tried to do that. They've actually tried that as a spiritual practice, but it's ineffective. Actually,
it probably creates more suffering. Actually.
I believe it does. It
Yeah.
does create suffering, yes,
Yeah.
because you become disconnected. You become unnatural.
Yeah.
In the way that you think and act.
Sure.
And it's totally natural. That
Yeah.
development, completely natural. It couldn't be more natural, because you're referring to nature or natural law in its purest form.
Well, that's
In your
really,
awareness.
yeah, and I mean that's really isn't that what Ayurveda's nature really encapsulates the spirit of Ayurveda, that we're whole, we're healed when we're connected, and we're separate, and it's a start of health issues when we're not connected.
That is so true.
And we're all composed of elements of nature, so it's that connection is really, I think, really the one of the most profound things about Ayurveda.
Yes, well, it's very interesting, because I always say that Ayurveda is like this marriage between consciousness and nature. And, that's the essence of it in a way, because you are drawing or increasing your life force, which they call prana, from these two sources, from consciousness itself through meditation, and through nature through plants and herbs and food. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
You draw prana from consciousness, and you draw it from nature, from herbs and food.
Sure.
So these are the two sources. So Ayurveda brings these together.
Right.
That's what's so beautiful about it, you see, because knowledge becomes changed and distorted, and bits get lost over time, and elements get lost. And what happened to Ayurveda over these few thousand years is that it became, just herbs, herbal medicine.
Right. It's become very, very much about herbs and.
Yes, well, it became that in India.
So it can almost feel like I'm not going to say it's akin to pharmaceuticals, but it's it's going beyond lifestyle when you start looking at herbs.
Yes, it is like
As the
pharmaceuticals.
panacea, herbs as a panacea, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely like pharmaceuticals because you are trying to heal when the situation has already gone too far. Whereas Ayurveda was designed for you to prevent before it even gets to that situation of an illness, say.
Sure.
And that's what pharmaceuticals do. That's exactly right. It's the same. It's just, of course,
Not that Ayurvedic herbs aren't much preferred to pharmaceuticals, being gentler and more
that's right, because
slower acting, but you
you're not
know,
getting the side effects, hopefully.
but you can overly rely and not get to the underlying cause. Um, but getting back to what you were saying about the marriage between matter, really, and consciousness, Ayurveda being both.
Well, yeah,
It's
because, it, the healing through that approach is going to be a conscious healing. If you're referring to your own consciousness and you're using some, herbs and medicines and food, then the healing is conscious. If it's just somebody giving you, packets of herbs or bottles of herbs, it's not necessarily going to be conscious, the healing. See. You need to refer to your inner self, and you're bringing in coherence through that connection to consciousness. You're making the mind and the body more coherent, which is the opposite of disorder, which is what disease is. So,
yeah,
that's what's very, very important is get
yeah,
to a stage where you're not creating this disease at all by your thinking and, by your behavior. And then don't go to the doctor anymore because you don't need to.
yeah.
You know,
That's really beautiful because I think
understand
that
that.
um, realizing that we are already whole, and that that is our natural birthright, is really perfect health, and that we can reclaim that through conscious healing, which isn't certainly isn't all about food. I think you certainly elucidated that
Mm.
there's things happening energetically that um, the healing we need to tap into, and that really what we're trying to create is coherence, instead of separation and division and um, all the things that the things that really kind of unravel us and lead to less than perfect health.
Yeah, stress. A lot of it is stress. And so one is trying to create an armor against stress and, and create an invincible situation where stress doesn't affect you, you know, and you don't take it on. Trying to create that through our coherence, because like if there's like a crack in a piece of glass rod or something, that's where it'll break. Or if there's a little hole in a boat, that will get bigger and you'll sink. It it's about eradicating the imperfections in the system and then creating this wholeness, or maybe wholeness first, and then the cracks get eradicated so that there's no weak area for disease to kind of focus in on. That's very, very important
Sure.
to see that, to realize that. So we're doing that by many different methods, but definitely spiritually and emotionally first, and then mentally and physically a bit later, or in conjunction with. But you're never going to do it by just physical means. You miss the
Sure.
whole point if you try to do that.
Sure.
You miss the point.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I think we're gonna wrap up in a few moments, but I noticed in watching some of your cooking videos on Facebook or YouTube, or a lot of the cooking in your videos, I notice you're cooking outside
Yeah.
and you're cooking close to the ground. I'm just curious. Tell me about that. I mean, it's very um,
Earthy.
very earthy. It's definitely has the earth element. But I'm wondering what calls to you. Number one, cooking outdoors, and then I like when you're cooking outdoors. I don't see you set up on a table. You're actually down there on the ground with the food and the fire and the. So what? Tell me about that, because I find it. Well, it's actually quite enjoyable to watch, and it looks like you're enjoying the experience. So I just wonder what calls to you about those things. You know.
Yes, well, I think, the cooking outside came about naturally because I was living in Hawaii
Well, yeah, you can do that there. That's for sure.
for several years. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot of cooking outside.
Okay.
My kitchen was actually built outside in the garden. And one appreciated that. One appreciated the connection to nature, I think. The fact that it became on the ground came about through, I wanted to make videos of cooking outside because I was doing it a lot, and it seemed like another approach to visual cooking, or to delivering, visuals of cooking. And I found myself, in places where I couldn't bring a table, actually, like, I was on the Grand Canyon, for example. I want to carry a table up there. Or maybe I didn't have one at the time. So I think it was more circumstances that created that, actually. But it seemed to work, all right, in those instances.
So it wasn't a conscious, necessarily a conscious choice on your part. It was just necessity.
Yes, it
Okay,
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't the deliberate.
I see. I see.
I
Okay.
don't think at all.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a trademark or.
No, not really. No, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it was more circumstances. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a favorite Ayurvedic dish?
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. I have many favorites, I think. I think, I've always liked the vegetables cooked with a sauce, like I call it vegetable korma,
Mm-hmm.
where the vegetables are cooked and then they end up in a rich sauce of
Is, is, is that
coconut.
usually coconut?
It's usually coconut and almonds,
Mm.
or almonds that are ground into a creaminess, or yeah, it's a very creamy dish, and the base of it is the characteristic is almonds and coconut, the flavors. Yeah, I like that. That's a favorite of mine, and I like khichdi a lot, which is rice cooked with a small a lentil or bean together. And I like to bake that after I've steamed it. I steam it first, and then I bake it and put my flavorings in, spices
Oh,
and different things.
I've never heard of it baked. How long do you bake it for?
I bake it for about 20 minutes. I steam it till it's almost cooked, but there's still some moisture, still a
Okay.
little bit of water. And then I just put a lid on, put the spices on, and I put a lid on, and I bake it very hot for maybe 20 minutes
Okay. So that
or
kind of
longer.
it sort of dries it out a bit, or
Um,
makes it a bit denser.
it makes it lighter
Oh.
because the water dries out,
Okay.
but it doesn't make it dry necessarily. It could be
Right.
dry.
Right.
It all depends how much water you started with. It can
Mm.
still have a sort of sticky consistency.
Mm.
Um, But yeah, it can make it a bit more separate, yeah, which is quite nice. It's based on an Iranian or Persian way of cooking rice, where they steam it first for 15 minutes or boil it first for 15 minutes, and then they put it in a hot oven with ghee, clarified butter, and bake
Sure.
it very, very hot.
Yeah,
They
and
even put coals on the lid, hot,
beautiful.
hot coals, yeah, and that kind of makes the rice fluff up and light, yeah. Um,
I like
yeah,
that.
that's where I got it from. I was cooking in Iran for a while.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful cuisine. There's no doubt. Persian cuisine.
Beautiful, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And they
Very.
would put lentils in sometimes, or beans, green beans, and maybe some spices.
Okay.
Yeah, those are and I love chutneys actually. I love the Ayurvedic idea of having a chutney with the meal, you know.
Yeah, that it just well, you're incorporating the six tastes. You're more likely to
Yeah,
get the six tastes with the
indeed.
chutney. Now, I know you come from England, or you come
Yeah,
from I should say Britain,
yeah.
and is there an Ayurvedic dish that the Brits like, or is that just totally not the case? Is there something that the Brits enjoy that you could easily make Ayurvedic, or any just curious.
I've never been asked that question before. That's a good question. Love that. Well, you know, I think the Brits love dal.
Oh,
I
okay.
I feel.
Sure.
Um, I mean, a lot of their dishes are influenced by India, for sure,
Yeah. Yeah,
because of their time in India.
they certainly do enjoy Indian food, no doubt.
They do, they do. I mean, they love the curry, of course, and we've got kedgeree, which is a rice dish with bits in it, maybe some lentils, maybe other things. It's derived from khichdi. That's quite, sometimes used. Yeah, I mean,
How about a traditional British dish that you think would be a good that you could easily create a nourishing Ayurvedic. You could transform it into its Ayurvedic equivalent that would be known as a classic British food.
yeah, that's good. Well, what comes to mind is rice pudding,
Okay, okay,
which is baked in the oven,
sure,
as a dessert.
yeah,
And in the Ayurveda, it would be kheer, which
sure,
is rice cooked in milk on the stove with nuts and raisins and spices in. Those two dishes are very similar, I
okay,
would say.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
and it would essentially be transformed to Ayurvedic cuisine by cooking method and the use of certain spices.
yeah, well, I mean, anything can be considered Ayurvedic, I think. Any dish really, from any country. It's not necessarily the spices. I think it's just like what what will that what will that dish balance in the person who's going to eat it. They're going to eat either that's a person, right, who is you know a bit anxious or a bit cold, cold hands and feet, or a bit nervous, or a bit too thin. If they eat some rice pudding, English style, which is sweet and it's warm, and it's the things in it are sweet, the dairy products are sweet, the rice is sweet, they're going to balance their vata. They're going to become less anxious and less dry, less thin,
Sure,
because
sure,
very unctuous dish, very
yeah.
important quality of the vata.
It's heavy. It's heavy. It's
Heavy, it's
sweet,
sweet, it's unctuous. I mean, we're looking at qualities. It's qualities that balance. The taste bring qualities.
of
So we're looking
course.
at the quality of the dish, what will it balance? That's what makes it Ayurvedic. Not that it's got Indian spices in, because it might
Right.
have English herbs in,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, no,
Some,
I think you bring up a good point, and I think it's
yeah,
a misconception that Ayurvedic cuisine, um, is Indian cuisine.
exactly.
And
Mm,
I think the point you're making is Ayurvedic, any cuisine can be Ayurvedic.
absolutely. It goes beyond culture.
Right.
The Veda is universal knowledge. Um, I mean, the fact that it was more present in Eastern or Indian culture, gives rise to, Indian dishes which have these qualities in, but we can apply them anywhere. We can apply it to Italian food, we can apply it to, Greek food or Persian food, it doesn't matter. Because remember, Ayurveda, means that we are um, drawing on the vegetables and food that grow near us, ideally, in where we live.
Sure.
You know? So yeah, it is a very big misconception that it's Indian cooking. Which, not surprisingly, because we cook a lot of Indian dishes. We use a lot of Indian spices, but it's interesting because like fennel, which is one of my most well used seeds and spices, grows all over the world.
Especially it's used a lot in Mediterranean cuisine.
It is,
Yeah.
and it grows in California, all over the place. The
Sure.
fennel
Sure.
grows in England.
And it's used in a lot of raw foods, but I think it's underutilized cooked, and it's really beautiful cooked.
I think you're right. Yes, not everyone is familiar with that. No chef is familiar with that. Yeah, but
Especially roasted.
it's great roasted. Yeah, great.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, the
Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful, and it's great in a korma with a
Oh. Yeah.
korma sauce on.
It sounds.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'm getting hungry. Um, on
Yeah,
that
me too.
on that note, we will conclude. Johnny, thank you so much. This has been an awesome opportunity. Thanks for your participation in the Healthy Peaceful podcast. I just want to
Thank you.
share. Yeah, absolutely. This was awesome for me and for our guests and viewers. What an honor. Um, I just want to share your information. All of this will be in the show notes as well. And on your website is myvedicchef.com, and your Instagram handle is the Vedic Chef, and Facebook is also the Vedic Chef.
Actually, my website is the Vedic Chef.
Oh, it is. Okay, I thought it was my Vedic Chef.
No, well, it has been that, but it's now the Vedic Chef.
Okay, great. I'll correct that. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or?
Well, no, I think we've covered that. My book is Eat, Taste, Heal, which you mentioned.
And your new book.
Yes, my new book is in the making still, and
Actually, before you say that, I wanted to just kudos to your book, Eat, Taste, and Heal. What I really love about it is it's divided into two parts, but I look at it as three parts, and it's a book with a physician and an Ayurvedic practitioner and yourself. So it has a holistic approach from that regard. And the first half is really just really beautiful about Ayurveda, the science of self-healing, and all the components. And the second part breaks down to your basic recipes, things to get you started, and then you've got the let's have fun after that recipes. So
yeah,
I really and it's a beautiful photography. It's really a beautiful book, so I highly recommend that. That's Eat, Taste, Heal, and I'll include that as well. Your new book, tell me about that. It's in the works?
Yes, well, I've written a lot of almost all the recipes, and I'm adding a few more recipes now and again, but I just had so many recipes that I liked that I wanted to bring out in a book. So that's why, I wanted another book. And the rest of it is of course it's an Ayurvedically based book, but the rest of the book, the text is going more into describing healing techniques and meditation more deeply, different healing techniques and meditation as a healer.
You know what? I did not elaborate on the fact that you are a very committed meditation teacher.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that before we conclude as well.
Well, yes. I mean, I teach what's called the Soma meditation, which named after Soma, the what we talked about, the
Sure.
supplement, the layer,
Yeah,
and it stands.
that's really beautiful.
Yes, well, it was actually an accident the way it turned out, funny enough, because I decided to have the name The Seven Secrets of Meditation and
Mm.
Ayurveda, and it just happened to spell Soma. It was one of those
Wow, wow, that's
I know,
great. I'll make a note of that. That's great.
it was a cosmic accident,
Yeah,
actually.
a cosmic coincidence.
Yeah, yeah. Cosmic synchronicity,
That's right. No coincidence. Yeah.
which was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I've been teaching meditation for about 40 years now, and meditating for 40 years or so. And yeah, so I teach people how I get them going with an easy and natural meditation where they will transcend thought in the meditation. And that is the key to any meditation should be really that's going to be the goal of it, or a goal of it. But meditation where one experiences transcendence, a state of no thought, and one goes beyond the technique itself, the moment. And so it's an eyes closed, sitting down technique, and it produces very deep rest in the body. It's like an intense kind of capsule of rest every day, twice a day, and so this will release deeper rooted stress and tension, fatigue from the body, whilst bringing in this wholeness, this state of wholeness in the mind. And so it's extremely effective and beneficial in keeping the body and the mind younger. Rejuvenates the body and the mind by producing this incredibly profound state of rest, which is not like sleep because one is, alert during it. And, at a certain point in one's practice of doing this, one will experience peace, and then one will experience bliss, like intense joy or something, of that nature. And then one can experience oneness, which is even beyond that, those two. And this is really the goal of meditation, to cultivate this level, this connection to the quantum field, to consciousness, to awareness of being. And so one's thinking and action becomes based more on being. And that's a very
Beautiful.
beautiful thing, because
It
that's
is.
really the goal of spiritual development, spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
of a conscious connection to one's infinite self. This makes your life cosmic. There's a cosmic element in your life. And we're not using the word lightly because everything is connected to everything else. But a human being who consciously, develops this over time is becoming, cosmic. They're connected to the cosmic, to the eternal, to the infinite, in their awareness, in their brain, in their mind, in their body. And this is going to produce, a very enhanced level of living and life, very enhanced and, a natural but very beautiful state, freedom, fulfillment. That's really the ultimate goal of meditation, and some people have achieved this, and they go on to be great teachers, of that wisdom, and because they live that teaching.
Yeah.
And,
well, I think that I love the way you described in meditating that you've created you essentially created a capsule of rest and relaxation. Yeah. That's a beautiful image. So thank you for that. And at that, I will say just thanks again. I really, really enjoyed our interview
thank
today.
You, Noreen, for a lovely interview.
Wonderful.
And great questions. Thank you very much.
Great.